Hare Krishna, everybody.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. I hope all of you are doing fine. You had a good Thanksgiving break and were able to spend some time with family.
Yes.
Yeah, I know this year we've all mostly been home, so at least hopefully we were able to do something else apart from our regular schedule. So I think that was a good change. Going into holiday season, more holidays coming. It's 5:04. I think more people will join. I think we can get started. So I believe last time we did until verse number 19, if I'm right. Yeah, we discussed this verse. Neither he who thinks the living entity the slayer, nor he who thinks it slain is in knowledge. For the self slays not, nor is slain. So yeah, this is a verse that we had discussed. So this is an ongoing discussion about the nature of the soul. So I will continue today from verse number 20. And as always, any questions, comments, please feel to interrupt me at any point in time. Okay, so verse number 20. न जायते म्रियते वा कदाचिन् नायं भूत्वा भविता वना भूय Ajo nitya sasvatoyam purano na hanyate hanyamane sharire. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Translation: for the soul, there is neither birth nor death at any time. He has not come into being, nor does not come into being, and will not come into being. He is unborn, eternal, ever existing, and primeval. He is not slain when the body is slain. So here, further description of the soul is given, that the soul is not neither subject to birth nor death. It does not come into existence. He has not come into existence, does not come into being, and will not come into being. So there are three tenses used. It's not that the soul was born at a particular point in the past. It's not that it will be born in the present, nor that the soul will come about or uh, come into existence at some point in future, because the soul is unborn. Right? So it doesn't have birth, doesn't have death. So in that sense, it's eternal, right? And ever existing. So it always exists, and primeval, right? So primeval over here, it refers to something very fundamental, right? What's the dictionary definition of primeval? Let's see. So if we say earliest, right, fundamental, something that is primordial or prehistoric. So in this sense, something refers to that is something that came, something that is first, right? Something that is, now in case of soul, it does not come into being at any point in time. So it fundamentally ever existed. So body, different kind of bodies manifest uh, and are acquired by the soul, right, based on karma. But the soul itself is primeval, is not slain when the body is slain. So body is subject to death, it's subject to harm, body is subject to destruction, but the soul is not subject to any of these changes. Now it is interesting here that the soul, which is referred to as, I mean, you can just say that soul never came into existence, but that thing is that idea is mentioned in three different tenses, right? So it's mentioned in past, present, and future. So bhutva. So here, sorry, kadachit. So here, there's only one word used. Krishna just says kadachit, any point in time. And so Srila Prabhupada expands that to make it very, very clear. Sometimes there is confusion that somebody can try to put some more color and misinterpret. So Prabhupada here is clearly saying kadachit means at no point in time, in either past, present, or future. So one might question, if it does not come into being, means it does not come into being, but just to add more emphasis, Srila Prabhupada is saying, well, neither in past nor in at the present nor at any point in time in future. Just like the war of Mahabharata, when it was fought, it was so ghastly, right? I mean, the sheer number of soldiers which were associated in the war on both sides. I think it was like 20 million on each side or something like that. So we talk about world wars, and there were so many casualties that happened during those world wars. But when you talk about Mahabharata, the description of Mahabharata war is described in the scriptures that, hey, war like this was never fought in the past, right? And this is the only one that is being fought right now, nor would any point in time in future such a war would ever happen, right? So it just adds more emphasis. So there's nothing more to it than that. It's just only for the sake of emphasis that is described in that fashion. So in the purport, Srila Prabhupada is saying, qualitatively, the small atomic fragmental part of the Supreme Spirit is one with the Supreme. He undergoes no changes like the body. Sometimes the soul is called steady or kuttastha, which means steady. So the soul and the super soul or the supreme spirit. That's why, here the word that is used is supreme spirit. So qualitatively, there is no difference between soul and the supreme person. Both are spiritual. What is the difference? The difference is in quantity in the sense, not in the sense of uh, you're not trying to weigh it or measure it. Of course, soul is very small, it's very fragmental, but what it means that the soul is subject to being influenced by material energy, while the supreme spirit is not subject to such illusions. It is not the supreme lord is not does not come under the illusion, is under the influence of maya, while the soul being atomic, it does come. For instance, the example is given: if there's a bonfire, it's a huge fire, right? And then there is sometimes you see sparks of fire that come out of that bonfire, and they are fragmental. So what happens as soon as that spark falls on the ground, it loses its fiery spirit. Same thing, the spirit souls, when they willingly or unwillingly, for whatever reason, when they lose the contact with the supreme spirit, they tend to lose their fiery nature, and they can be overpowered by material illusion. That's what it means. So the soul is not subject to any kind of transformations, but the body is. So what are the 6 kind of transformations that the body is subject to? The body is born in the womb of the mother, right? It remains. So once the body is born, since it is born as an infant, so after that, the body grows, right? Then it remains in that adulthood for some time. Then it produces byproducts, right? So produces progeny. Then the body starts dwindling. That means the body starts aging, and finally, it is subject to death. So these are the 6 transformations or phases that the body goes through. The soul, however, does not go through such changes. The soul is not born because he takes on a material body. The body is the one that takes birth. The soul does not take birth, and the soul does not die. Anything which has birth also has death. This is the common experience. So if we try to understand things from our experience, that anything that we see in this world is subject to uh, coming into being and then subject to death, right? So definitely bodies, kind of species of life, they are subject to this. But you can talk about something, even on a subtle level. Civilizations come into being, they grow, they reach their peak, they dwindle, and then they collapse. Like all societies like that, the Roman civilization, the Harappan civilization, and there are different point in time, there are different kingdoms which were very powerful. Similarly, nations, you can talk about companies or organizations, big businesses, right? They, like GE at the time, at one point, was very powerful. It's still there, the company is, it's still existing, but it's not the, as mighty. It was a symbol of American industrialism, right? So now that's replaced by the tech companies nowadays. Like Jeff Bezos recently said that one day Amazon will become bankrupt, right? So he's a realist. So he knows that, all organizations, they go through these transformations. So this idea of progress and decline and annihilation can be applied to everything. Even somebody can be elevated all the way to the post of Brahma, which is the highest position one can achieve in this material world. But nothing is permanent. Everything is subject to change, and unless one perfects one life and achieves spiritual perfection, then even somebody who has reached the position of Brahma, is also subject to decline. So these transformations happen to anything material, not just body. Everything in this universe is material and temporary. So under the impression of the body, we seek the history of birth of the soul, because that's what our experience has been, right? Yeah, because the soul has no birth, the soul does not have any past, present, and future. Soul is eternal, it's ever existing, it's primeval, right? It's fundamental. So fundamental truth means it cannot be broken down further. Like the body, you can trace the history. Well, this body was born from such and such parents, and those parents had again their own parents, and then so you can trace. If you trace the history to in previous ages, children, they were supposed to, at least in Indian culture, they would memorize the names of their 4 generations. So at least one can trace the history up until 7 generations in the past. But even if someone is able to trace all the way up to Manu, so mankind comes from Manu. And then in the scriptures, the history of Manu is described. Well, Manu is, who such and such Manu is son of such and such personality, can trace all the way up to Brahma. So anything material, it might be possible to trace the history, and so we are accustomed to always find the cause of something, right? What is the cause of this? What is the cause of this? And but when you try to apply that logic to the soul, it does not apply, because the soul does not come into being at a particular point in time. The soul does not become old as the body does. The so-called old man therefore feels himself to be in the same spirit as his childhood or youth. So what it means is that um, even when the body becomes old, now the body might not support, it's not maybe as strong and as youthful, as full of energy as a young body is, but the desires are same, right? And the embodied soul, whether in an old body or young body, again wants to do, has the same desires and wants to experience similar things, but the body does not support, right? uh, and that's essentially what it's saying. It's the same spirit, feels himself to be in the same spirit as childhood or youth. Okay. The changes of the body do not affect the soul. Soul does not deteriorate like a tree nor anything material. Soul does not the soul has no byproducts, right? So the body produces byproducts, namely children, right? And then you will see that the same gene pool is carried on by the progeny and generation after generation. So you could do trace the genome of a certain lineage, but the soul does not have that, right? The soul does not create any byproducts. We associate with different people in course of our life, and different relations manifest, and all these relations come into being at a particular point in time, and the body is destroyed. Ultimately those relationships end. But the soul actually is eternally related to Krishna, and in that sense it is related to everyone on a spiritual platform. We are all spiritual brothers, and we are all spiritual sisters. We are all siblings. uh, the byproducts of the body, namely children, are also different souls, yes, and owing to the body, they appear as the children of a particular man, right? So in that sense, on that platform, we identify someone as our immediate family or relatives. That is on a bodily platform. The body develops because of the soul's presence, but the soul has neither offshoots nor change. Therefore, the soul is free from the 6 changes of the body. So here's the important point. As long as the soul is present, the body develops. As soon as the soul leaves the body, the transformations of the body stop, right? So I think we talked about that in the past. Even when the body is aging or declining, as long as the soul is there, the body declines. And declining is not same as decay. It's not foul smelling, right? As soon as the soul leaves the body starts decaying, and that's why the body is either subsumed or either it's buried, it's consumed by the fire. So that is a difference, right? Similarly, when the embryo develops in the womb, it is because of the presence of the soul that the embryo starts developing. So in the Western world, and there is a big debate, right? At what point can you ascribe life to an embryo? And saying, so if the embryo is aborted after a certain trimester or certain phase of development, then they ascribe that this point, beyond this point, life really exists. Before that, life does not exist. So this is the point of big argument. And in the Christians, they are strongly opposed to it. They are opposed to abortions, and so they might have a certain idea. I have not studied Christian theology in this particular aspect of what they ascribe. I think they, if it's after like first month or after certain duration of time, they ascribe the life exists. But according to scriptures, in Bhagavatam, Srimad Bhagavatam specifically says, actually the embryo itself starts developing only because of the presence of soul. So it's not that the soul is embodied at a later point in time. If the soul is not impregnated, then the body does not develop. So I think it is the 3rd canto, 30th chapter, 1st verse of Srimad Bhagavatam. It says, Karmana dev netrena jantur deha utpattaye. So under the influence of higher authority and according to one's karma, a soul, jantu, soul is impregnated in a particular kind of body, and then the embryo starts developing. So it's not that the soul is impregnated at a later point in time. Rather, the embryo starts developing only because of the presence of the soul. So 331. Yeah, it's not 331, maybe 329. Karmana deva netrena jantur deho utpattaye. It's a very important verse. Karmana deva netrena. It's in Srimad Bhagavatam book. It's 330.
331.
Yeah. I missed by one chapter. I thought it was 30th chapter. It's 31st. Yeah. So Karmana dev netrena jantur deho papatye striya pravishta udaram pumso retah kana ashrayah. Very important. Dev netrena, under the supervision of the Lord. Karmana, by the result of work. Jantu means the soul. It's a living entity, is referred to as jantu, is impregnated into a particular kind of body. Upapattaye, it's like that's the impregnation, where striyaha pravishtha, it enters the body of woman, udaram, in the womb. And what? The pumsaha, retaha, the semen. In the particle of the semen, the soul first of all enters the, there's so many sperm cells, but the particular sperm cell, the soul is impregnated in that one particular sperm cell, which then enters the ovum, and then the embryo starts developing. So from Bhagavatam we clearly know, right? Actually, the fusion of the sperm and the ovum successfully happens only because of the presence of the soul. Right? The soul is impregnated in that the retah semen. Under the, how does it happen? Under higher authorities, under the supervision of the Lord. And what's the criteria? By the result of the previous karma. So karmana deva netrena. So very clearly described over here how a body starts developing in the womb. So yeah, so soul is not subject to the changes of the body. In Katha Upanishad, there is similar passage which is described. The meaning and the purport of this verse is same as Bhagavad Gita, but here in this verse there is one special word, vipaschita, which means learned or with knowledge. So it's just a different form, but the same truth of the same verse that we are discussing is described. Soul is full of knowledge. So what is the nature of the soul? We say it qualitatively, the soul is same as supreme. Only the difference is that it's a minute particle. So same as supreme means what? Right? So the qualities of the supreme spirit is Satta, Chitta, Ananda. The soul is eternal, does not have birth, does not have death. Chitta is full of consciousness. Right? The body has no consciousness. As soon as the soul leaves the body, body is considered dead. Like if the body won't respond if it is subject to any kind of harm, right? It doesn't have any feelings. So the body is jad, it is inert, but the soul is chetan. The soul is full of consciousness. And then Satchit Ananda. Satchit, you can say it's consciousness or knowledge. And then Anand is joyful. So by nature, the soul is joyful. But because of different material conditioning, that fundamentally joyful nature is suppressed. And then depending on our sensory perception, we experience the pleasures and pains, which kind of yes, which covers the soul. The natural enjoyment of the soul is covered, and the enjoyment that we experience is through sensory perceptions, is on a bodily level. Even if one does not find the soul within the heart where he is situated, one can still understand the presence of the soul simply by the presence of the consciousness. So here in the heart is not specifically necessarily referring to this heart biological organ which we know as heart, but heart literally here means that where your heart is, how we say, like where your mind is, where your consciousness is. So that actually happens even before the body is acquired. Rather, we acquire a particular kind of body because we have a particular kind of consciousness, particular kind of mentality. And for that mentality to fructify and nurture and manifest, we acquire that kind of body, right? And so yeah, in essence, this is saying that we can conclude the existence of the soul based on the presence of consciousness. There's no material way you can ascertain this. And then we'll study this in the later verse, and I'll elaborate at a particular point in time. Just like if you talk about, say, electron microscope. So electron microscope, it's not that you can see electrons inside it. What it does is that there is an electric field, and when a charge enters an electric field, it creates a distortion in that electric field. And that distortion of that electric field, by probing that distortion, one can ascertain the presence of a charge. You see, you cannot see an electron. But how is it perceived? It is perceived by the effect it creates in the field in which it is present. The distortion it creates in the electric field. By that, it can be perceived. Similarly, this material energy is also a field. It's called, there is the idea of matter field. I think if I'm using the right term, it's a scientific concept. It's a matter field. So matter field, they call it fermions. So these, you can think of a soul as, again, that minute particle. Just like the electron distorts the electric field, the soul also distorts or creates an effect on the matter field. What is the effect the soul creates? The 6 transformations. There is nothing else in the world that can cause those 6 transformations of matter. Only the presence of the soul, right? So you can perceive the soul by the effect it creates on the field in which it is present, just like you can perceive an electron based on the distortion that electron creates in the electric field, right? You cannot see an electron. It's a theoretical concept. What's an electron? What's any charge? It's a probability of finding some sort of, even how they define proton, nucleus, electron is its probability of finding a charge in a certain space. That's why if you go back to your physics or chemistry classes, they talk about Pn orbit, Np orbit, and then each orbit there is an orbital charge cloud, and there is probability they calculate. So those are theoretical concept. Though you cannot directly measure it, you can experience it by the effects they create. So same thing, you cannot see the soul because that soul does not interact with any other field, right? It's you cannot. It's not affected by fire. It's not affected by water. It's not affected by air, right? It's not affected by ether. And then any kind of physical measuring instrument that you have, the subtlest of the measurement tools that we have are on an ethereal platform, which is all electromagnetic radiation. All communication that is happening is at an ethereal level. But soul is subtle than that. So all these tools are blunt. You cannot measure it. But then soul does create effect on the matter, and by that we can perceive it. Okay, the same topic. Oh, this is the Srimad Bhagavatam verse. Okay, coming back to Bhagavad Gita. Yes, the soul is full of knowledge. Even if one does not find the soul within the heart where he is situated, one can still understand the presence of the soul simply by the presence of consciousness. So we discussed that. Sometimes we do not find the sun in the sky owing to the clouds, or for some other reason the light of the sun is always there, but we are convinced. But the light of the sun is always there, and we are convinced that it is there for daytime. Just like, sometimes we cannot see the sun because it's covered by the cloud. But if it is day, even if I have my blinds on the windows closed, you can still, there is some light within the room, right? And so by that we can conclude that sun is out there. So same thing, we cannot directly see the soul, but its presence can be perceived. As soon as there is light in the sky early in the morning, we understand the sun is in the sky. Similarly, since there is consciousness in all bodies, whether man or animal, we can understand the presence of the soul. This consciousness of the soul is, however, different from the consciousness of the Supreme, because the Supreme Consciousness has all knowledge about past, present, and future. However, the conditioned soul or the consciousness of the individual soul is prone to forgetfulness. So we don't, like Krishna says to Arjuna later that, hey, you and me had many, I think we already had the verse, you and me had many births. I remember all of them, you don't. So that is the difference. When he is forgetful of his real nature, he obtains education and enlightenment from the superior lessons of Krishna. So we are forgetful about even our material past and previous births. But a real forgetfulness is that we are spirit soul and we have a special relationship with Krishna. That is a real forgetfulness. And that can be revived by obtaining education and enlightenment from teachings of Krishna, as he is providing here in Bhagavad Gita. Krishna is not forgetful. If Krishna was also forgetful, then there's no meaning in studying Bhagavad Gita, right? It's just somebody's opinion, right? So, and just like it is said, is that someone who is himself liberated can liberate others. Just like if there are so many prisoners, right? If someone who is imprisoned wants to be free, that individual needs the help of someone who is already free, right? His fellow inmates, they are helpless in freeing that individual. Similarly, if Krishna is also subject to illusion and bondage like us, then Bhagavad Gita, which is meant to liberate the conditioned souls, would not be potent in its purpose, right? But Krishna is not subject to illusion, right? So that is the difference. So there are two kinds of souls. One is Anu Atma, that is we, and another is Vibhu Atma, also known as Paramatma. So Param and Atma together is Paramatma. So Param and Vibhu, they are synonyms. So in Katha Upanishad, and there are other Upanishads also, the analogy that is given is that on a tree there are two kinds of birds, right? One bird is enjoying the fruits of the trees while the other bird is simply observing. And so, you can think of this body as that tree, and on that tree there are two birds. One is the soul, that is ourselves, and then there is super soul, which is a manifestation of Krishna in his Paramatma form. And we are trying to enjoy different kind of pleasures according to our desires, our karma, according to time, place, situation we are in. And accordingly, we either experience pleasures or pain, mixtures of both. And the Paramatma is simply observing. And, And the Paramatma is observing and knows our past life, our present, and where we are going. So though we might not recall our past, but the Supreme Lord does. So both Paramatma and Jivatma, they are situated on the same tree of the body, within the same heart of the living being. And only one who has become free from all material desires, as well as lamentations, can, by the grace of the Supreme, understand the glories of the soul. So, unless one has some spiritual knowledge, one cannot make such distinction and understand that how that soul is different from the body, how is it different from the mind, how is it different from the intelligence, and beyond that, there is also Paramatma within the body. Right? But when one technically understands all these differences, what is the nature and functions of each of these different elements, how they interplay, what leads to what, and then when we start analyzing things, whenever we, some event happens or we put into a particular situation, and then we behave in a particular way, and then we analyze why I was forced to behave in that fashion. So what was my role? What was the role of the mind? What was the role of the intelligence? When you analyze it, you can slowly start understanding some of these things. But ultimately, as we take up spiritual process, the Lord is merciful. By His grace, He's present within the heart as the super soul, and He provides us with those realizations and knowledge by which we can see things as they are in reality. So Krishna is the fountainhead of super soul also. So Paramatma is actually a manifestation of Krishna. Localized manifestation. Localized meaning it's localized in each and every body, as it will be discussed in the following chapters. So Arjuna is atomic soul, forgetful of his real nature. Therefore, he requires to be enlightened by Krishna or a bona fide representative. So this is sum and substance of this particular verse. Anyone has any questions on this? Any questions, comments? Okay. Next verse. Veda vinashinam nityam yainam ajam avyayam katham sa purusha partha kam ghatayati hantikam. O Partha, Partha, son of Prithu, that is Kunti. So Arjuna is referred as O Partha. How can a person who knows that the soul is indestructible, eternal, unborn, and immutable kill anyone or cause anyone to kill? So Krishna is questioning. He says the soul is eternal, right? How can someone who knows that the soul is indestructible, so someone who is situated in knowledge, right, that the soul is indestructible, is eternal, is not born, and is not subject to any change, how can such a person kill anyone or cause anyone to kill? Because one who knows this is not acting on a bodily platform. So it's not theoretical knowing, but if someone who has realization that the body is acting according to the modes of the nature, sattva, rajas, tamas, and the soul is indifferent to that. And if one is situated in that knowledge, then one is not motivated by personal ambitions or personal reasons, and so is not acting to kill anyone in order to achieve something or cause any, or similarly influence someone else to act on that platform, right? So ultimately it is all about acting according to knowledge, right? So for instance, one who, he gave an example like soldier who kills the enemy on the war front is not subject to punishment, but the same soldier, when he comes back to his hometown, randomly kills people, then he's subject to punishment. On the battlefront, the same soldier is awarded medals for bravery. But so what's the difference, right? Both is killing, but then the difference is in terms of one acting out of responsibility and acting in knowledge. So in the purport, Srila Prabhupada says that everything has proper utility. So violence also has a utility, right? And sometimes violence is unavoidable if someone comes to harm those who are not at fault, right? And then such envious individuals cannot be corrected, in the sense that you cannot have a dialogue with them, and so it is the only way they can be checked is through violence. So everything has its proper utility. A man who is situated in complete knowledge knows how and where to apply a thing for its proper utility. Similarly, violence also has its utility, and how to apply violence rests with the person in knowledge. Although the justice of peace awards capital punishment to a person condemned for murder, the justice of peace cannot be blamed because he orders violence to another person according to the codes of justice. So, in essence, the judge might award a capital punishment, but the judge is awarding capital punishment not because the judge or the jury is envious or has anything personal to gain in trying to award or punish uh, someone by giving capital punishment judgment, right? They don't have anything to gain or lose, but they are acting not according to their whims. They are acting according to the code of the law. So that is the difference, right? The judge is respected, right? And judges and the jury, they are awarding justice, right? In Manu Samhita, which is the law book for mankind, it is supported that a murderer should be condemned to death, so that in his next life he will not have to suffer for the great sin he has committed. So either one has to atone, prayashchit, or one has to take punishment in this life. Because if that does not happen, the punishment awarded by the Yamaraj is even more heavy, right? So one cannot escape one's karma. So the best thing is one willingly atones, and in that way one doesn't even have to. But if one does not willingly atone, then one is subject to the local laws, right? So according to Manu Samhita, it says that any kind of sinful activity, if one voluntarily goes atonement, then the king doesn't have to, give any punishment. And though that atonement generally is very severe in many cases, in the sense that I don't know the exact details, but from what I read and recall, like suppose somebody kills a cow, then it says like the atonement could be like you stay 6 months in a cow shed with the cow, and then one has to serve the cows, right? Take care, eat only once, right? And so there are other different kind of details which are described. So by that, one is also developing empathy towards cow and it's serving, so it's atoning by accepting those voluntary inconveniences. So is voluntarily is feeling guilty and wants to correct. That's the best situation, right? But if one does not do that, then the king awards punishment. So in the Vedic culture, killing of animals as well is not encouraged, especially the cow. And we see in Srimad Bhagavatam, beginning of Srimad Bhagavatam, the personality of Kali was actually hitting the bull, which represents Dharma. And so Parikshit Maharaj, when he saw that, he was shocked. He says, wow, how come someone can, attack animals, especially the cow and the bull in my kingdom? And so immediately he pulls out his sword to behead the personality of Kali. So that is the story. So the king awards punishment if one does not atone. But somehow if that person does not even get the punishment from the state, then the reaction that awaits after the end of this life, that reaction is even more severe, right? So in either case, one cannot escape. So in that sense, it's mentioned over here that if murderer should be condemned to death, so that in the next life he doesn't have to great sin he has committed. So obviously, so this knowledge is there in the Vedic culture, but it's not there in other traditions. So in the liberal ethos of the present time, there is in many Western countries there is this huge motion against banning capital punishment. They are agitating the government to outlaw. Maybe many states, they don't award capital punishment anymore. They will give you like imprisonment, which would, the more crimes they commit, it kind of stacks on top of each other. And somebody might have a sentence of 300 years in prison. It's never going to happen, right? No one's going to live so long, right? But says we won't award capital punishment, but just keep on extending the term of imprisonment based on the severity of crime. But over here it is said that the best punishment for someone who has committed a murder, or first degree murder, especially, as using the terminology of present law, that person has to be awarded a capital punishment. Therefore, a king's punishment of hanging a murderer is actually beneficial to that individual. Similarly, when Krishna orders fighting, it must be concluded that violence is for the supreme justice, and thus Arjuna should follow the instruction, knowing well that such a violence committed in the act of fighting for Krishna is not violence at all. At any rate, the man, or rather the soul, cannot be killed, right? So different arguments that are given. So one is on a moral ground, Arjuna being, representative of dharma, is to fight for the right cause. It was the last option. He tried all the means to avoid the war, but that was not possible. So that's one reason why he has to fight. And then as far as the individual soul is concerned, is not going to get killed. A surgical operation is not meant to kill the patient, but to cure him. So that's the comparison that's given, right? So the surgical instruments are also very sharp, and they might do deep incisions on the patient's body, right? So if one is a child especially, you might be shocked, if first time comes to know, like, hey, why is the doctor supposed to help me? Why is he making cuts on the body of the patient? But one who is situated in knowledge knows that there is a difference, right? So similarly, all uses of violence are not on the same platform. Just like somebody, an expert surgeon, making an incision on the body to cure the patient, can be compared to a righteous Kshatriya like Arjuna, who is fighting in order to check those who are evil. Therefore, fighting executed by Arjuna at the instruction of Krishna is with full knowledge, so there is no possibility of sinful reaction. So that is the import of this verse. Anyone has any questions or comments on this one?
Yeah, yes, Prabhu.
Yes.
So if I understand it correctly, the body, mind, and intellect are influenced by three modes of nature, and anybody do anything because of the influence of three modes on body, mind, and intellect, and soul actually does not have any role in it, and it just only sees it and moves on. So if that is true, if someone kills someone else, it is actually because of a body, mind, or intellect being reacted to the modes of nature, which is totally not in their control. In that case, why would someone acquire a sin?
Right, it's a good question. So the difference is that the conditioned soul, why is it called conditioned, is that the soul is not realizing its true nature. The soul is conditioned by the mind, intelligence, and ego, and the soul identifies itself with that mind, intelligence, and ego, and it thinks that I am this body, I am this mind, this is my nature, this is who I am, and it acquires this false identity. That's why there is this false ego. So between, what is ego doing? Right? So you have senses, your mind, and intelligence, but there is this false ego which connects mind, intelligence, and senses to the soul. False ego means a false identity. Now the soul, the conditioned soul, though it is different from these three senses, mind, and intelligence, it identifies itself with the senses, with the body, with the senses, with the mind and intelligence. It thinks I am this person, and it is overpowered by those strong modes of nature. So like you talk about Duryodhan or Karna, right? So they had assumed his identity to I am the son of Dhritarashtra. Duryodhana was thinking I am the crown prince. All this is something that I am supposed to enjoy. I'm not even going to give land which is where one can prick just one pin. I won't even give that much land to the Pandavas. Everything belongs to me, right? So he's overpowered by that consciousness, and so because the soul thinks that I am this body, I am this mind, I am this intelligence, then it experiences the pleasure, pains, and the reactions associated with it, right? So it says, okay, you are this body now, okay, if that is what your understanding is, then you experience the reactions accordingly, right? Uh, but if one is clearly able to see that actually I am not this body, I'm not this mind, I'm not this intelligence. And so the soul, it does not allow the modes of nature to overpower itself. One clearly understands one's spiritual position, and in that fashion one is acting, right? Then that individual is not affected by the karmic reaction. So that person is kind of aloof, that the emotional connection is not there. You know what I mean? So for instance, if you think of the example of Bhishma, right? So he was bound by his the vow he had taken, right? That he would always support whoever is the ruler is, right? It's a promise he had given, but he did not have any personal ambition, right? If he had, then he would have never taken that vow. He said, I don't want to become the king, right? That was the whole basis. Devvrat, he is known as Bhishma because he took the terrible vow. He said he made the promise, because the concern of was Matsyaganda's father was that what's the name of Shantanu's wife?
Sati Devi. Is it
No.
no?
So she was the boat. Satyavati. Yes, Satyavati's father had the concern that even if Satyavati marries Santanu, you are the crown prince. What will happen to her progeny, right? And actually, astrologer told me that her child is destined to become the king. So I don't want any kind of hindrances. So but so Bhishma says, well, I don't want to become the king. I promise. He says, okay, you don't want to become the king, but what about your children? Right? How can you are giving up your right, but you don't have right to give up the right of your own child? What if they might protest? So he's doing all this calculation, and Bhishma says, I'm not going to marry, right? So he had no interest in ruling the kingdom. So now he's duty bound and he's acting. So even when he's fighting against the Pandavas, he's not fighting out of envy or out of personal ambition. He knows that he is the spirit soul, right? He knows how mind, intelligence, ego, everything's acting. And when so he's not so much emotionally connected in the sense that with Duryodhana, though he's doing his duty bound, he's put into that difficult situation. He's forced to act. The modes of nature are acting, but he's not overpowered by it in the sense that he's acting and he's doing what he is supposed to do. He's fighting against Arjuna, he's fighting against Krishna on the other side, but he is not overpowered by false ego. Yeah, that's the point. He doesn't have that false identity, he doesn't have that false ego. And so when Krishna finally when Duryodhana says that, hey, you are very lenient to the Arjuna because you like him, and that's why otherwise you would have killed him. So he says, okay, you are challenging me. Tomorrow either Krishna has to pick up the weapon, or either I kill Arjuna, or Krishna has to break his vow in order to protect Arjuna. That's the only way Arjuna will be saved tomorrow. Otherwise, because he knows that no one can save Arjuna except Krishna, and Krishna has taken a vow that he's not going to pick up any weapon. So unless Krishna breaks his vow, he's not going to. No one can save Arjuna, and he actually does it, right? So again, this shows that he's not even attached. He gives up. He likes Arjuna, but he's willing to give up his likeness because for the sake to prove that he can do his duty. And next day is so heavy on Arjuna that, there was no, Arjuna was sure to be annihilated, right? No one can overpower Bhishma. Right? In the end, he is killed because Shikhandi, Arjuna takes uses Shikhandi as a shield, and Bhishma has taken a vow that, I'm never going to attack a woman, right? So now Krishna in order to stop Arjuna, he has to intervene. He says, otherwise Arjuna is going to get killed. So he picks up a wheel of a broken chariot and he rushes towards Bhishma to attack him, and Bhishma is happy. He says, this is the perfection of life. If to be killed by the Lord himself. So he's happy to see that form of the Lord. So you can see, Bhishma is not at all affected by the external circumstances, though it might appear to somebody is not trained to understand, can appear that, oh, Bhishma is just senile and he's a feeble person, he's overpowered by, he has other ambitions and want to be maintained by the trust, or he and so it appears like that he is acting under the influence of the modes of the nature, but he's not affected. He doesn't have that false ego. He's put in that particular situation, difficult situation, and he's acting within those constraints. But that is the difference. And so such personalities are not subject to any kind of reactions from their action. And that's the point that is given over here. That one who is actually acting in a knowledge. How can a person who knows not just means theoretically, but one who knows, and has a realization that soul is indestructible, eternal, unborn, and is different from the subtle body and the gross body, which are fully under the control of the modes of nature, that individual, even if that kills, he cannot kill anyone or cause anyone to kill. Though it might appear that person is actually engaging the war and is killing anyone, is not killing, because here the word khanti refers to killing out of uh, other external reasons, right? It's not, they're motivated by something, right? But that's not the for a self-realized soul, that those external reasons are not the cause of the motivation. Does that make sense?
Yeah, sure. So basically, having a false ego, connecting to the uh, mind and intellect, is bound to get punishment. If someone can able to get off this false ego and realize that he's not body and intellect, and he's the soul itself, and monitor and observe the body and mind intellect are working based on the three modes of nature, and move on based on that, then he'll not get bound to any sinful uh, effects.
Yeah, acting on that platform. So I'll give you another example. Suppose, see, anger is condemned, right? So being angry, no one likes. And anger is considered one of the enemies, right? Kam, Krodh, Lobh, Moho, Mad, Matsarya. These are all the different enemies. So Kam, Krodh, anger is something that is not good. It leads to downfall. But, and why do people become angry? When things don't happen according to their estimation, what they want to happen, they are frustrated. When their desires are frustrated, it manifests as anger. Now the parent also becomes angry towards the child. You think that, but we know that the parent is not frustrated. A genuine parent who out of affection becomes angry towards a child is not that kind of anger that comes out of frustration, but the parent actually, almost as if like they're putting up a show of anger, right? Because you want to be stern and strict, so that message is clearly communicated to the child, and child corrects. You try to explain, the child does not listen, and sometimes that sternness needs to be shown, and so that anger is displayed, right? Now the parent does not have any envy towards the child, right? So right, so in this sense that the person, though that person is manifesting that anger, is not overpowered by the anger. You see, they are not overpowered by the anger, though the anger is manifested, in order to correct the child. In other situation, if when one is actually overpowered by the anger, one is miserable, they are frustrated. There's something they were desiring or wanted to obtain or achieve, and people are not acting according to that will. And so there, that frustration leading to that anger leads to downfall, right? But when a parent actually is showing that anger, actually does not lead to the degradation, because that anger is not coming out of envy. In the heart, actually uh, they have they don't have any kind of harsh feelings, right? But they, out of that genuine affection for the child, the parent is manifesting the anger, right? To externally, to that's appear same, but there is a qualitative difference. So similarly, the to understand a self-realized person, it's not easy. Externally, that person might appear just like any other materially conditioned person, but that is put into that situation is an acting, but is not affected or overpowered by it. Does it make sense?
Yeah, totally. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions before we move on to the next verse? Okay, verse number 22. This is also one of the very famous analogies that people know. Vasami jirnani yatha vihaya navani grihnati naro aparani tatha sarirani vihaya jirnani anyani samyati navani dehi. As a person puts on new garments, giving up old ones, the soul similarly accepts new material bodies, giving up the old and useless ones. So when the clothes become worn out and old, we change it. We either use it as a rag for some other purposes, or if it is still usable, we give it in charity for those who are needy and you might want to use it. But we don't lament for the change of old clothes. We just get new ones. Rather, we are happy. Okay, I'm going to get a new shirt now. So similarly, the body is also kind of a cloth covering on the soul. And like anything material, just like clothes, the body also will eventually become old. But then when the body is not usable anymore, then that body is relinquished. But that occasion is actually, if you think in a different perspective, it's a moment of rejoicing for that soul, because that soul was trapped into that body which is old and worn out, but now the soul would acquire a new body, right, which is fresh, which is young, and then it can continue a spiritual journey. Ultimately, all of this is a spiritual journey. Even if those who are not actively practicing a spiritual path, when the soul is subjected to multiple failures and successes, and one, or maybe could take many lifetimes, but eventually one will hopefully realize the nature of this world. And so each of this is a learning, and whenever one acquires new bodies or put into new situation, we all retune and calibrate our understanding of what world is, how it works. Ultimately, everyone is looking for happiness, though the means might be different. Spiritual path helps to award a permanent spiritual solution to the same problems that the materialists are trying to solve through different kind of adjustments of the material situation. It's too hot, you put an air conditioning. It's too cold, you put a heater. And so there's constant challenge to fight against the inconveniences that is caused by matter. But it's eventually one realizes that it's a futile battle, in the sense that you can keep on fighting, but unless, as long as we are here, we have to keep fighting. There's no permanent win until we completely get out of this situation. So all experiences are meant eventually to bring us to the stage of atatho brahma jigyasu, hence the inquiry into the absolute truth. Um, and that's the purpose of it. So the end of a material body, it means the beginning of a new one, right? And one can be rejuvenated with new youthful energy and continue its sojourn in this material world, and hopefully take up spiritual path in the course of time. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada mentions the change of the body by the atomic individual soul is an accepted fact. Even modern scientists who do not believe in the existence of the soul, but at the same time cannot explain the source of the energy from the heart, have to accept the continuous changes of the body which appear from childhood to boyhood, from boyhood to youth, and again from youth to old age. So, in essence, what Srila Prabhupada is saying over here, that even if somebody does not believe in the existence of the soul, at the same time, it is very difficult to explain how all these transformations are happening. I mean, you can come up with model and say that, oh, the cells, they are growing and they multiply, and there are hormonal changes, and so one can describe this process in great technical detail. Excuse me, but that description is simply um, the description of the process as is happening. It does not, the current scientific methodologies don't tell you why is it happening, right? I mean, they might ascribe the cause that, oh, because this particular gene, whenever it's present, is causes that, but then why that gene is manifested in some people or why it is not, right? Even if that was the cause. So this is achintya. We cannot explain. Or even if you say, well, cells are growing and multiplying, and you can say, but why at certain point in time they stop growing, and why does the body start aging, right? So something, the cells are still multiplying and growing, but something has fundamentally changed, right? Unlike this, the child body, which is growing in a very youthful, nice way, once one achieves middle age, and then the body starts declining. So what happened, right? Why for some people, though in general it's the same curve, for some people it might, the old age might start appearing earlier, some of them it's delayed, and everyone has a different lifespan, and so all of this is mystical. So one has to, no amount of technical and scientific sophistry can explain the real essence of it. I mean, you can explain the process, but despite of that, all of this is mystical. You cannot replicate it. No one has been able to do it, right? The idea that we'll stop old age from happening or stop the death from happening, no amount of scientific progress can ever achieve this. Neither in the present nor in the past. In the past, there were different personalities like Hiranyakashipu, Ravana. They all, tried to achieve eternal life through other mystical processes. But then, no one has been successful. So, yeah. So in essence, all of this is very mystical. The presence of the soul is the cause of all these changes. Even if one does not accept the presence of the soul, it's very difficult to explain how things are happening. And if somebody claims that, oh, no, we know how these things are happening, then one should be able to stop it, right? But that is real understanding. If you say, well, I understand, but I cannot stop it, then that's not a full or complete understanding. The transference of the atomic individual soul to another body is made possible by the grace of the super soul. So we talked about that verse from Srimad Bhagavatam. The Prabhupada summarizes that. So it's under the direction of the Supreme this happens. Super soul fulfills the desire of the atomic soul, as one friend fulfills the desire of another. So it's again giving the example of those two birds who are watching on the same tree. Well, one is enjoying the fruits of the tree, another is simply observing. So the one who is observing is also the friend. Gives inspiration, gives direction. So the super soul is the cause of our memory, our forgetfulness, our discrimination. Sometimes, we don't, though we might have read something, or we might know so many things, we might not recall something. Why? Again, that memory is not our own ability. It is mercy of Krishna. Krishna says, Sarvasya chaham radi sanna visto mata smriti jnanam apohanam cha. From me comes smriti, remembrance, jnanam, knowledge, apohanam, forgetfulness. Like I was trying to remember the name of Satyavati. I was not able to recall, right? Right. So memory, again, we think I have so much memory, I can memorize and remember things, but nothing is in our control. If the Lord desires, we can remember, otherwise we cannot, right? So we all have that experience. Sometimes we cannot recall. It's not. It's beyond our control, and it's not. And memory is again very mystical, right? It's not like a hard drive, like 10 terabytes or whatever, it's full and it's done. You can put millions of impressions and never get full, right? Those impressions are there within the subconscious, and we might not able to recall our previous life, but when the Lord desires, those, we think, some people remember their past life, right? So it's not happening by our own ability, it's happening under the control of the Supreme. So here the same example is given, that one of the bird is the observer, is the super soul, and he's watching the friend, and he's guiding and inspiring that bird or the soul to pursue whatever desires that individual has. It does not intervene. As a Paramatma does not intervene. As long as our karma allows us to do something, the super soul will actually give us intelligence. Even so, if we are misdirected, and you want to do something, like the intelligence to a thief how to steal is also comes from the Lord, right? But the Lord is not asking him to steal it, right? Or to give charity, either good or bad. The Lord is not giving that inspiration, but whatever desires one has already decided, I want to pursue this, and the Lord is making the arrangement for us to act on those desires. First of all, by providing this body, which is provided by the Lord, the arrangement of gross body, then the subtle body, mind, intelligence, and the ego, this elaborate creation of the entire material universe, right? Arrangement of food, rain, grains, all of that. Why did the Lord create? So that we can fulfill our desire to enjoy independently of Krishna. Just like if a child, once he grows up in youth and he says, well, Dad, I don't want to live with you. I want to go and do my own thing. I have my own desires and ambitions, and I just want to see the world and uh, explore on my own. It says, the dad might be might have a lot of wealth, a successful business. They say, hey, you can just come and run my business. You don't have to struggle. No, I want to do this. Then the dad might not like it, but then even is the father himself who makes those arrangements for the child to go out and experience the realities of life. Hopefully the idea is that in the process the child would have some learnings, and then from those learnings in the real world, hopefully he will make the right choice and will reunite with the father. So our desire to enjoy independently of Krishna, we cannot even fulfill that if not helped by the Supreme Lord. So is the body is the instrument or the vehicle by which we can fulfill those desires, and that is also awarded by the Lord. The food to sustain the body is awarded by the Lord. The intelligence to act on our desires is provided by the Lord. The memory is provided by the Lord. So the Lord is not encouraging us to do it, but whatever desires we already have, either good or bad, those are facilitated by the Supreme Lord in his Paramatma feature. He is also an observer and a Sakshi. He is watching. Although they are in the same quality, one is captivated by the fruits of material tree while the other is simply witnessing the activities of the Lord. So Krishna is that witness, which said witnessing bird, while Arjuna is the bird that is eating. Although they are friends, one is still the master, another is the servant. Forgetfulness of this relationship by the atomic soul is the cause of one's changing his position from one tree to another tree. See, why is see this life could be a last life. You don't have to jump from one tree to another. As soon as a bird turns its attention towards the bird who is his real guide, and he says, "Oh, my real happiness is with this other bird, which is really interested in my self-interest." As soon as one realizes it doesn't want to jump from one tree to another tree, say, "Oh, the fruits of this tree are really nice. Oh, maybe let me try the fruit of another tree. Maybe they are also equally tasty or more tasty." Or sometimes the fruits of this bird of this tree are very sour, very bitter. I wish I can go on another tree. So either for good reasons, either because of good experiences or bad experiences or mixture of all the experiences, we continue to change our desires and ambitions, and there's no end to it. And that's why then we are awarded different bodies. Okay, then if you want to experience this kind of desire, then for this another kind of body is more suitable. And then we get a different kind of body. Like, give you an example, if somebody develops the keen desire to sleep for a long time, like how much can we sleep in a human body, but as a bear one can hibernate for a long time. Or if somebody is very accustomed to eating flesh or meat, in the human body is very tough, in the sense that somebody has to hunt. Like, how many of us can hunt, right? Either you use a shotgun or any other kind of damage, then you have to peel the skin off, then you have to cut. Again, you need instruments, right? Even a shotgun or like a knife. And after that, one has to separate out the flesh from the bones, and then it has to be cooked. After cook, even also after consuming it, it's followed by needs some kind of alcohol to digest it. And so it's so much cumbersome. Now somebody else might be doing, you can somebody they people just go to Safeway or Costco and buy. Somebody has all packaged it for them, but it means again there is a huge industrial enterprise that does it. So it's very laborious. In the body of a tiger or a carnivore or animal, all the instruments are all part of the body. It's much more easier, right? And the appetite is strong, and one can digest that kind of food. So different kind of desires are fulfilled in a better way by different kind of bodies. And as there are so many desires, there are different species of life, and each species of life can fulfill a particular kind of desire in the best possible way that other species of life cannot. And so the choice is up to us. Either we can continue to pursue different kind of desires to enjoy independently of Krishna. So to enjoy is nothing wrong. It's the nature of the soul is to enjoy. The question is like that child who said, "I want to enjoy independently from my father." The enjoyment cannot stop, right? So one already doesn't have to go out and struggle through, like the child wanted to experience the realities of life, but there's no need for it to do, right? So all kind of pleasures are there, but it's they're subservient to Krishna, in the sense that just like the pleasure that a parent gets from serving the child, right? The parent might himself go hungry and want to feed the child, and child is uh, when he sees the child being satisfied and happy, then the parent is satisfied. So that is an expression of love. Similarly, Lord has similar feelings for his devotees, and the devotees also have similar feelings for the Lord. So subservient to Krishna meanings, just like the bhoga that we prepare, instead of just to gratify our tongue, it is made, the bhoga is prepared for the satisfaction of Krishna, what he likes to it, how it's prepared. We offer it to Lord, in his deity form, out of love, and then the remnants are taken in a humble, by accepting a humble position. To eat remnants of someone is accepting a low position, but that remnants are very, again, it's same food, right? It's very delicious, right? So, and then when one enjoys it in proper consciousness, saying, "Oh, this is such such a tasty food, how much Krishna would have enjoyed. That is the proper consciousness one has to accept while honoring prasadam. That's why we don't say we eat prasadam, we say honor, we give respect. And so by cultivating that consciousness, we're still enjoying the food, but what are we doing? Our consciousness is changing, or this is not, instead of thinking this food is to satisfy my tongue, we are slowly trying to train our consciousness to see everything in relationship to Krishna, how everything is meant for Krishna's enjoyment, right? And we become secondary enjoyers. So the enjoyment cannot stop. And so, but as long as that bird, instead of turning the attention to the companion bird who has his real self-interest, is not paying attention to that bird, but instead just wants to jump from one tree to another tree to try keep on enjoying different kind of fruits independently, right? And then it's subject to the sour fruits and the bitter fruits and the rotten fruits and sometimes little juicy foods, and there's always an anxiety or somebody might come and attack me while I'm eating the food. That's why birds, they eat something and they look sideways, look sideways. There's a constant anxiety, right? We don't have to be in that anxiety, right? So similarly, our situation is like that. We do get some pleasure in this material world, but there's always some anxiety, or there's a pandemic, right now we are experiencing. Now this pandemic also, there is a risk of well, I do need to get my groceries. I'm going to prepare a nice meal, but I have to be careful. I make sure I don't get infected, right? So I have social distancing. I put my mask on. There's impact on the economy. Somebody can lose their job. So there's always anxiety, right? So our situation is like that of the bird, when who is constantly trying to enjoy the different kind of fruits on different trees. Uh, but that's an unnatural position, right? We need to turn our attention towards Krishna. So the jiva, or the soul, is struggling very hard on the tree of material body. But as soon as he agrees to accept the other bird as the supreme spiritual master, as Arjuna agreed to do by voluntary surrender into Krishna for instruction, the subordinate bird immediately becomes free from all lamentations. Both Munduka Upanishad and Svet Svatara Upanishad confirms this. So the same verse appears in two different Upanishads. Essence of it's what we already discussed so far. It's just saying there are two birds on the same tree. One is enjoying, one bird is eating, but it's always filled with anxiety and moroseness. But he thinks he is the enjoyer. If some way or other he turns his face to his real friend, the Lord, and knows his glories, at once the suffering comes to an end, and one is free from all anxiety. So Arjuna has actually done that now. He has turned his face. He has turned his face towards Krishna, and he wants to understand Bhagavad Gita from him. Thus, hearing from Krishna, he can understand the spiritual truth, the supreme glories of the Lord, and be free from lamentation. Arjuna is advised herein by the Lord not to lament for the bodily change of his old grandfather and his teacher. Rather, he should be happy. Just like we are done with used and worn out clothes, and then we would acquire new clothes, and we are happy to have new clothes. So it's a different perspective that Krishna is providing. And he's saying that doesn't mean that you kill just because somebody is old, just go and kill them, or there is really like what they call is euthanasia, right? Somebody is suffering so much in that body, it's it's medical suicide. Rather just end that pain and get. So we're not recommending that just because his teacher and grandfather are old, they should be killed. But if that's what happens in the course of Arjuna performing his righteous duty as a Kshatriya, then there is no need for lamentation, right? Not that one purposefully kills those bodies for no reason, so that they may be cleansed at once of all reactions from various bodily activities. So another thing is, our body comes with a certain baggage of karma, just like in that Bhagavatam verse, that soul is impregnated into that and into the semen, and then it acquires that particular kind of body that is a reaction of a particular kind of karma, whether good or bad, right? So the certain path of that individual throughout the life is already chalked out in some sense, right? So as long as the body is there, we are still experiences that set of reactions from previous life. And so when the body comes to an end, it is at once the cleansing. It's cleansed at once of all the reactions of various bodily activities for that karmic situation. One who lays down his life on a sacrificial altar or in a proper battlefield is at once cleansed of bodily reaction and promoted to higher status of life. So there was no cause for Arjuna's lamentation, especially for Kshatriya. There they are acting in valor. They are performing their duties of a Kshatriya. So death in the course of execution of one's duty uh, is success of their life. So for a Kshatriya, it doesn't matter which side he is fighting, right? As long as the war is fought on principle according the codes of dharma. They don't attack in the night. They don't attack on children. There is certain code of engagement. Now it doesn't matter the Kauravas or the Pandavas. Anyone who was killed on the battlefield, because to fight it requires valor. And the quality of a Kshatriya is one of the qualities Krishna describes Yuddhe chapi apalayanam, one who does not run away from the battlefield. Right? So that is not an ordinary thing to do, regardless of which side they are fighting, right? And so one who lays down one's life, does not run away from the battlefield, and he dies in the course of execution of the Kshatriya duty, is promoted to the heavenly planets. So on both sides. And those who saw Krishna in person, or they were killed by him, they achieved the highest perfection beyond the heavenly planets. So Krishna is again reminding Arjuna, well, there's no cause of lamentation, right? So all these soldiers, at least you know that not only they're going to get a new body. Well, somebody said, okay, you're going to get a new body, but that body could be in a lower species of life, or could be in a degraded situation. But Krishna is saying, no, that's not the case. They're Kshatriyas executing their duties, and if they are killed in that course of action, they are definitely going to be elevated to higher planetary systems or the heavenly planets. So that's the sum and substance of this particular verse. Any questions or comments on this? It's 6:27. I don't think I'm going to start a new verse. Maybe we can quickly, I'm not sure. It depends how much we discuss. The gist of this is pretty short. But if there are questions, yes, I can take questions.
Yeah. When a soul like you explain, I mean, in the example, the bird moves from one tree to another tree, right? So I'm trying to relate to the knowledge that, I mean, the information that we were told from our childhood, like there will be Yamaraja and there will be, Yamaloka, and he will actually assess your karma, and based on that he'll give punishments and everything, right? All those things, where would it fit in between? Like, is there any information that you know about that?
Yeah, that is described in the third canto as well as fifth canto. Yeah, fifth, towards the end of the fifth canto, the hellish planets are described. So the thing with, see, the karma is karma. We make distinction between good karma and bad karma. What we perceive as good, which is pleasing to our senses, those kind of reaction we ascribe that to be good karma, and then unfavorable situation we ascribe it to be a bad karma, which is, so the duality is the symptom of the material world. For the Lord, there is no duality. So he does not make distinction between good and bad. Both are material conditioning. You put someone in a golden chain or an iron chain, both situation the individual is bonded. So just because one is bonded by golden chain does not make the situation any better. So heaven is considered desirable and hell is considered undesirable. That is because of our attachment and our conditioning. But for the Lord, there is no distinction. It's just like the State Department or the government has the prison house. They call it Department of Correction in America, right? DOE. And then they might have other agencies where the public servants, the federal government employees, and there is mechanisms to reward them. They get so many benefits and privileges, and those who take up public service, they are appreciated a lot, and then everyone likes that honor that one gets from that service. But for the government, both are important. They don't say that, hey, Department of Correction is not important. They in America, they spend $45,000 on average annually on one prisoner, right? If they did not think this was important, why would they spend so much money, right? That's why they call it Department of Correction. They want these individuals who have taken to crime for whatever reason to be corrected. So the hellish situations are, again, you can think of that as a Department of Correction. From a government affair perspective, both are important. They're not saying, well, heaven is desirable or hell is not. Well, both are, that's the part of their governmental affairs. But we think one is desirable, one is not desirable. So where it falls is that after the body is annihilated, or the body dies, the soul is taken to Yamaraj. So what happens is, most individuals, we have mixtures of good activities and bad activities, or pious, what we call pious activities, and what we would otherwise call sinful activities. Both are binding. And the way it, again, sixth canto describes how the subtle body cannot see, right? It's not, subtle body cannot be perceived by the five senses. It's not ethereal. It's not made up of air or fire, water, earth. So the Yamadutas, when they come, they use special kind of ropes, which are very subtle. These ropes are known as Yamapasa, and they are made up of three modes of nature, some combination of Sattva, Rajas, Tamas. And they can tie the subtle body and extract the subtle body out of the gross body. And then one is taken to the court of Yamaraj. How that path is and what one is subjected to is also described in Bhagavatam. And the Yamaraj decides. In Chitragupt, he has the record, just like the police, they have body camera, right? So everything nowadays we have cameras watching. But there are, in arrangement of the Lord, the sun is a witness, the moon is a witness, the air is a witness, fire is a witness. All the elements around us, they are witness, they are observing. There are demigods of all these elements. And so the record is there, and then the Yamaraj makes a judgment. And generally, it's a mixture of both pious and sinful activities, and we are awarded both. We enjoy the portion of our pious activities in heavenly planets. It's not that the pious activities nullify our sinful reactions. They don't, except that unless an atonement is done, right? So the sinful activities can be nullified if one has atoned in the present life, and then one doesn't has to suffer for it. But performing pious activities does not nullify sin, and so the soul gets opportunity to enjoy for the portion of this pious activities. So it is sequentially happens. So there might be some period of hellish existence, some period of heavenly existence, and once those reactions are both positive and negative reactions are burned out in those concentrated situations, after that one again comes to the Bhumandala, the again in human form of life or other species of life sometimes, and again has to generate another set of good or bad activities. So that's why it's called, later in Bhagavad Gita we see Krishna says that, okay, stop this cycle of just going up and down. It's like monkey business. You go up, come down, go up, come down. What is this? So even if it does not go to hellish planets, even if one goes to only perform pious activities, you're going to have an enjoying, and once this credit is over, you have to again come over here, and those pious credit again go up. So there's no end to this. So yeah, those different kind of experiences in heaven or hellish conditions are there. Unlike Christian understanding, which is, well, you live in heaven eternally, and their understanding, when they say heaven, they are calling it kingdom of God. Or you perish in hell forever or burn in hell forever. That's not our understanding. Understanding in Vedic theology is, those are all temporary situations. Both heaven and hell, again, not just for the Lord, even somebody is spiritually perfected, they don't care whether they go to the spiritual kingdom with Krishna or they are in this material world. They don't care if they are in heaven or hell. They consider all situations as equal as long as they can remember the Lord. That's all they care, right? Narayana para sarve na kuttaschana bibhyati swarga apavarga narkeshu api tulyartha darshina. Narayana para sarve, one who considers Supreme Lord Narayana as the ultimate truth. Na kuttaschana bibhyati, what they have to fear. Bibhyati. Swarga, heavenly planets. Apavarga, liberation. Or narkeshu, or hellish condition. Tulyartha darshina, tulya artha, equal vision. So, they don't make such distinctions. So the distinctions of good and bad, the dualities are all creations of our mind. As the golden chain is as binding as the iron one. Hope that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions anyone has? So if no
So
more,
I have a question.
yes.
You earlier talked about Kam, Krodh, Lobh, Moh, Mada, and Matsarya, and then I think the other six that I've heard is Kam, Krodh, Lobh, Moh, Ahankar, and Irsha. So I'm trying to understand what the difference is and why sometimes it's referred to as one versus the other.
So I think the two that are different, I have not heard the other version, but they might have similar meanings. So if we see, let's see, so 6 which are described, right? So Kama, Krodha. So Kam is desires, Krodha, Lobha is anger, and sorry, Lobha is greed, Mada, Matsarya. So Mada is like almost pride, intoxicant. Matsarya is envy. So you say jealousy, Irsa. So Matsarya is just different. It's more Sanskritized name of Irsha, which is Irsha is most people can understand. Matsarya people don't. But I think it just means the same thing. It's just different words.
Okay.
Yeah, I actually did research about this sometime back. So everything starts with only karma, like because of desire. If we don't get the desire satisfied, we'll get krodha, we'll get angry, and if we get satisfied, we get greedy, like lobha. Krodha, lobha, moha. Moha means if we don't. Moha means we wanted to have it for a long time, like without that we cannot live. That is a state, like I want to be something.
Illusion. This is what we need.
This is what we need, and we cannot live without it. That is called moha. Like moha. Mada means if we got what we want, we get the pride. The pride kind of thing where we treat other people.
Yeah, mad, madness. Mad,
yeah.
the word mad comes from mad, madness.
Yeah. And Masterya means if someone else got it and we don't get it, the crying is Masterya. So that I mean, this is the meaning I got when I was doing some research, but maybe.
Yeah, I mean there's interrelation between different vices. They all kind of feed into each other and just binds us further into material entanglement. So it has to be cut off. Krishna talks about how all these things manifest later in the second chapter. Towards the end of the second chapter, he describes. Yeah. Thank you.
The one I wanted to say is it's all starts with desire. So if we know how to come out of that, then we actually come out of all other 5 easily. That's what I come to a conclusion.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing this realization. Any other questions or comments? Okay. If not, we will end the class. 222. That's last verse we did. I'll make sure I remember. And so we'll start from 223 next time. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Jamin Bhai, can you post recording from the last session?
Yes, I know. I was just thinking. I kind of slacked on it. I'll make sure tomorrow I update both last week's and then this week's.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.